If you're buying or selling a business, you're probably looking at a promissory note and wondering how to make sense of it. I'm Sarah Sharp. I'm a deal attorney. I do deals every day, people buying and selling businesses. There is one question that every promissory note must answer. Before we get into that, though, notes can really help your deal in the deal structure. If you're a buyer or a seller, they're a really valuable tool when you're structuring your deal. A promissory note is a promise to pay. It's a regular loan document. It is something that your lawyer drafts usually, saying that I will pay you X amount with X amount of interest over this many years. And there's other terms that really matter in there as well. But in the context of the deal itself, if you're buying a business, promissory notes are really valuable because they can bridge the gap between evaluation. So, and for a lot of other reasons. So if you think that your business is worth 1.2 million, the buyer thinks it's worth $1 million, they can offer you $1 million with a $200K promissory note and make that promissory note subject to certain conditions, like if they make enough money off of your business after closing in the first couple of years, turns out you were right, your business was worth that amount, great, they pay the note. If not, the note gets reduced. That's usually called a retention adjustment, and it's a really nice way of saying, I'm the seller, you're the buyer. We both hope that you're right and your business is worth more. And if that's the case, I'll pay you more, but I'm not going to promise it because I am more conservative. I'm the buyer. I want it to be lower. So they can really bridge the gap and help you get that deal over the table. It's really important that you don't think that the whole note amount has to be in one document subject to the same terms. So regularly I'll see $5 million practice, they're putting 2.5 million down, the buyer is, and the rest is a note, right? A seller note subject to certain terms, amortized over X amount of years, that type of thing. But you don't have to treat all of the loaned amount the same. You can have as many notes as you want. Every dollar could be subject to different types of terms. And that can be really valuable. There's one place that you see a lot of promissory notes in the sub $5 million business buying space. And that's in the context of an SBA 7A loan that's financing the buyout. So when there's an SBA 7A loan, sometimes people, in lieu of putting money down and putting that 10% down to be able to buy the business, they will instead use a seller note as their equity injection. And the first time I heard the term equity injection, I didn't really know what to make of it. But what it means is I'm not putting the cash down. I'm giving you this note, and where the seller is agreeing to loan me the 10% down, and then I'm going to pay it back. If you do that right now in 2025, when I'm recording this at least, and it changes all the time, so always update your research. But if you use a seller note as an equity injection, typically that means that you have to abide by whatever the bank is interpreting the SBA SOPs to require. So if they, right now, that is 2 years, usually full standby, meaning that no payments of principal or interest for the first 24 months after closing. So if you have a seller note that says that, you're pretty good. There is some question about what that means. Does interest get to accrue at closing? Does interest accrue later? All of that, it's specific to the bank, but you can take that portion, make it, subject to the note requirements and make it 24 months standby. It can't be subject to a retention adjustment to use as the seller equity injection right now. So that's an additional point. And then the bank is going to really scrutinize the debt service coverage ratio. So they might want you to make it payable over a longer period of time. And a lot of banks, not all, don't like to see balloon payments on the seller equity note. So that's a portion of the note. But what I see get people in trouble is they'll say, well, I'm going to put $500,000 down and have a $500,000 note. But since I'm using a seller note as the equity injection, it has to be 2 years standby, blah, 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 blah. That is not necessary. Just take the 10% portion of that note, comply with what the bank requires for a seller equity injection. The other one could be a second note that's subject to different terms. So don't paint with a broad brush. Use notes creatively, divide them up, make them serve different purposes. Totally appropriate. The reason that I really like promissory notes as a deal tool in the sub $5 million asset purchase space that I'm playing in is because it's so much easier than an earnout to administer. And this is a little bit more in favor possibly of the buyer than the seller. But I tend to, as a lawyer who's doing these deals with folks who have limited resources, and primarily what I mean by that is their time, right? Most of my clients are running a business, whether they're running a business and trying to sell it or they're running a business and trying to buy another one. They are busy people. As a result of that, earnout, the traditional concept of an earnout where you have a bunch of money that's set aside and an escrow agent is holding it and you've got an escrow agreement that everyone has signed. And at the end of whatever period of time, if you've made X amount, you go and petition the escrow agent to release the money in accordance with the agreement. That is a lot of extra work. It's a lot of extra place for ambiguity and place for disagreement to come up. Also, there's fees. So escrow agents charge some fees usually, or they at least take the interest. The money that you're putting aside, that's not ideal because we like to cut costs where we can. Another reason that I like to fashion it so that it's a promissory note and not an earnout is because if there is any dispute between the parties as to whether the metrics that you were hoping for were met, or really any dispute at all, the escrow agent is not interested in getting sued for releasing that money to the wrong person. So they're going to say, no, go get a court judgment and we'll see you then. So it can be really hard to get your money back from that escrow agent if that's happening. I'm going to pause here because I talk a lot about all these ways that you can use notes, dealacademy.org, in our courses, and that help you structure kind of your letter of intent and think about the different tools in your toolbox that build an attractive offering. So check that out and like and subscribe to this channel while you're at it so you can get more advice from a real deal attorney who sees deals every day. The escrow agent concept and the earnout, I do like to phase out if the deal is small enough for another reason, and that's because of the interest rate environment. So if I have a client that's taking on a big loan, it doesn't make sense for them to pay a really high interest rate on that money that's sitting in an escrow. So I'd much rather have it formed to be a promissory note so that they can just keep the money they have and then pay it if the metrics are met. So for all of those reasons, a promissory note is maybe your most valuable and flexible deal tool. But not all promissory notes are created equal. So there's one question, like I said at the beginning, that every promissory note needs to answer. It's going to say the amount, it's going to say the principal, the interest, when you're going to pay it, how you're going to pay it, what happens if you default. But you can define all of this as or what. The promissory note says, I'll pay you, or what if I don't? What happens if I don't? And that's the question that we need to answer. So tons of the provisions that matter that look like boilerplate to regular human people but are really important and differ from note to note are answering the question, or what? That covers, is this a secured note? Is there collateral behind it? Like if you're leasing a car and you don't make a payment and they can come take it back, is there collateral on this note? Not in a lot of the deals I do because it's professional services and there's not a lot of collateral to go around. Is there a personal guarantee? Is a huge question to ask. And that is in all my deals. Is there a personal guarantee? There are reasons that people legitimately may not offer a personal guarantee. If it's a financial buyer and they have a big fund and it's just some guy working for them, he's not going to want to personally guarantee that note. But if that's the case, then you can get a parent guarantee from a different entity that at least has some assets in it. So that's part of answering the, or what if I don't pay question. The other part of the collateral piece is there a UCC lien filed? That is a really powerful tool that can really, in my world, primarily inhibit you if you have a lien filed against the assets. That's a nice way to exert yourself if you're trying to collateralize a note and make sure that the answer to that or what is, okay, if you don't pay me, I come and take your house, or I come and take the company back. That is a powerful answer. I don't necessarily recommend it. Most of my deals are SBA finance, so all of that would be subordinate to the bank anyways. Most of my clients don't know how to do debt collection, and they're not going to want to take on the obligations of going and trying to get somebody out of their primary residence. That's not really something that's realistic. But UCC lien filings can be appropriate in certain circumstances, especially if you're buying a company that's got a warehouse full of widgets and you can collateralize your note against the widgets and file a lien so you can make sure that you're not one of 55 people who've collateralized a note against the widgets. It can be a really powerful tool. But inherent in all of those are, okay, so let's say there's a dispute, you haven't paid me, I have to go do stuff to go get the collateral back or to go take advantage of this personal guarantee and sue you as an individual. All of that. Who pays for it? Who's paying the attorney's fees? That's a really important question to ask because trust me, I know a lot of litigators now at this point in my career, having practiced law for 13 years and having been a litigator. And when I refer a client to them, the first thing they do is they scroll up and say, is there attorney's fee provision? Because they want to make sure that they're getting paid. And they're much more likely to help you out and be happy about it if there's a fee shifting provision or an attorney fee provision. That means that the person who's supposed to pay doesn't pay, and the person who's supposed to get paid gets the fees of collection covered in addition to the money that they were owed. Super powerful. Related to that, you have all kinds of other terminology, waiver of notice and presentment. All of this language is really important as to what happens happens if you don't get paid. So pay or you get sued. Pay or there's a dispute resolution mechanism. So some people will even put an arbitration provision in a promissory note, but it really depends on the nature of the deal. So I think most people are just going to have dispute resolution. The traditional court system, in a traditional court system, is probably going to be a faster route to resolution. However, you have to specify where. So if you're in New York and you're buying a California entity from a guy who lives in Florida, and there's a dispute, where do you want to have that fight? It is more complex when you're making that decision about like the other agreements. In the context of a note, usually if there's any physical collateral, I want it to be in that area. If there's no collateral and we're just talking about a personal guarantee, I want it to be where that person lives. But that's just the way I look at it. Every lawyer in every case is different. If you found this valuable, please like and subscribe to our channel where you can get more tips from a real mergers and acquisition attorney who deals with this stuff every day. And